Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome again to my video cast here on YouTube, Politics 2100. This is episode 15, and I'm calling this one The Seductions of Contrarianism and Anti-Vax Propaganda. So I'm introducing here this idea called contrarianism because it's a very, I think, powerful let's say it's a phenomenon that I'm seeing a lot in a lot of different areas of politics and public discourse, and one can argue that almost the entire right-wing political, or certainly the right wing as of the last 20 or 30 years, has been about contrarianism, and it's kind of a version and a more adult version of the willfulness that I was talking about a few episodes ago. And but this video is really focused on a very particular, I was inspired to write, or not write, but to vlog about it because the Majority Report did a great service, I think, by examining very closely a particular anti-vax contrarian named Bret Weinstein. And I'm going to put the link to their video below. They just did it recently. So Bret Weinstein is a former biology professor at Evergreen State University. He has become, or is part of now, what's called the intellectual dark web. He actually, and is also his brother, Eric Weinstein. And he considers himself a free speech warrior and a free thinker, an independent-minded thinker, and as almost all of the people who call themselves the intellectual dark web think of themselves. And so the incident that happened, and you'll see this in the video, is that he has something called the Dark Horse podcast that he and his wife produce. It's here on YouTube. I'm not going to link to it because I don't want to support their anti-vax propaganda, but it's easy enough to find if you're curious. Anyway, so a British man was a follower of Mr. Weinstein or Dr. Weinstein, and has a PhD in biology. And he was posting videos on Facebook about him not taking vaccines and talking about his symptoms. And he passed away in early July, but this only came to my attention through the Majority Report. And this man, his name was Leslie Lawrenson. He was posting directly from the Dark Horse podcast on his Facebook about how vaccines were dangerous or were potentially harmful, and that he preferred to develop a natural immunity to COVID-19. And it killed him, okay? Soon after he posted some of these videos, you'll see in that longer Majority Report video. And I'm just wanting to point out that video and recommend that you look at it, and because it's a very nice analysis of this particular of the rhetoric that basically Mr. Weinstein uses in his video cast. But also, I'm want to take a step or two back and look at that as an example of what I'm calling contrarianism. So contrarians like Dr. or like Bret Weinstein make a name for themselves and also attract viewers, and this is a very important part of their strategy, is they attract readers and viewers by claiming that they are brave truth tellers who are defying a consensus that is corrupt or is mindless, or that somehow that they are the Davids to the Goliath of a particular viewpoint or set of ideas. And particularly during COVID-19, Bret Weinstein has developed this anti-vax line of discourse. I mean, he's not alone. There are other people who do similar things. He draws on some of his as Sam Seder and Emma Vigeland and Nomiki Konst in this video as part of the Majority Report team, comment. He has this particular gravitas, so to speak, in his speech pattern that sounds, as they say, like an NPR announcer. He sounds calm. He through that, they're supposing, and I think they're correct, that it creates a trust that is not borne out by the information that he presents. So, for instance, and this is pointed out in the video, one of the key pieces of both the anti-vax rhetoric we have now, and not just rhetoric, anti-vax movement we have, and also anti-mask movement, and COVID denial in general, is a lack of appreciation of statistics and understanding probability. And in this video, Sam Seder points out that Weinstein, who has a PhD in biology and should know statistics, creates an interesting makes an interesting error in terms of his use of probabilities with regard to whether you wouldn't get sick from the vaccine versus getting sick from COVID. And it's very elementary and very, but in the world of contrarianism, this seeming paradox, that Weinstein is using to gain viewership in the world of people looking for information about COVID, or people who are probably predisposed to distrust public information and authorities, informational authorities. So, and I would support, and I will get to this in a moment, but I will support. It's not a bad idea to be skeptical of information that one gets from authority, news sources, and to do research if you have the time to do research about things that you think in some way don't make sense to you. But this contrarian style, it becomes a rigid, reflexive, in the sense of a reflex, like your knee when someone hits your knee with a hammer or with a one of those rubber things. It's like a reflex. In contrarianism, this saying you have the truth because you are in opposition to this received wisdom, it becomes a rote, repeated stance, and it's really in contrarianism. And again, you need to judge for yourself if someone is actually a contrarian. In contrarianism, that is considered to be an appeal to it's a boast. There's an implied boast there that they are courageous, that they are independent-minded, and therefore trustworthy, because they are taking on Goliath, that they're the David taking on the Goliath. And this intellectual dark web, and also just a whole host, not just the intellectual dark web, but we have, which is associated with the right wing, even though they claim to be non-affiliated with, for instance, the Republican Party as it currently stands. But it is a similar defiance that we see, for instance, in the governor of Florida defying public health advice, or the governor of Texas defying public health advice as a political move. And this contrarianism is also, you find it in, there are a number of formerly left-wing or liberal people who've sort of turned to sort of a kind of a flirtation with the neo-fascist right, including people like Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi, who have become, in my mind, contrarians, who see that the truth of something is measured by how much it contradicts the sort of received wisdom. So I think, though, it's hard to get your mind around, because, for instance, I'm someone of the left. I think being critical of corporate media, or having a jaundiced eye about what you're told by powerful actors or powerful media sources, it requires some critical thinking. Critical thinking is not reflexive, in that you can sometimes absorb information from these sources and then decide, well, wait a minute, it's true. I don't have a disagreement with it. And in particular in the area of public health, and this is where kind of Bret Weinstein is foolish, and also the vaccine skeptics are foolish, in that they are this happens to be received wisdom or conventional wisdom that happens to be particularly strong. It's not the same thing as propaganda for a war. Like for the Iraq War, you had lots of media that were, creating a false narrative about WMD, and at least for me, it was quite transparent that they were lying, and there was no concrete evidence of that in Iraq, and it clearly had, even though at that time there were less independent sources of media, and you had to look closely at what was going on, but so that was a questionable, that was a media campaign that was clearly questionable, and also we were right, okay, but in terms of this public health crisis that we're in now, the conventional wisdom, what governments are saying, or at least the federal government is saying, is largely correct. They made some mistakes, and I don't know, I wasn't alone in saying that, but for instance, the mask, the early pronouncements that masks were only necessary for hospital workers was wrong, and I saw through it pretty quickly. I mean, I was gathering information from a number of sources, but otherwise, it wasn't entirely bunk. Okay, and generally the idea that there was a dangerous pathogen out there is not. But there are people who say, "Oh yes, it's entirely a fraud," and because they've been told this by a number of bad actors, people who were, and also the previous administration was trying to politicize the pandemic in a way that, so it created an opening. So, and this is something that I'm gonna, bring this, sort of bring it together a little bit. But this, the reason why I think, and Nomiki Konst in the video points this out, there has just been a general crisis of legitimacy of many media sources and of many institutions, not just the media, but the institutions that supply the media with information like the CDC. And there's been a crisis of legitimacy for some good or some valid reasons, and then for some not so valid reasons. But there's a crisis of legitimacy in our society that creates fertile ground for what we're calling conspiracy theories, and also this contrarianism, which is often sometimes linked to conspiratorial thinking. So I think I just want to point out this and bookmark the idea of contrarianism, and which I will be returning to in future videos, because it is a poor substitute for actual critical thinking. It's bogus. It's a bogus representation of, or a fraudulent, a sham form of critical thinking. And I think critical thinking is a valuable skill. We should all develop our critical thinking skills continuously throughout our lives, and sometimes we don't have the time. Of course, I'm not saying everything. We can always examine everything with the same intensity, but I think this concept of recognizing contrarianism and then understanding how you can get beyond that to evaluate the truth or non-truth of various statements using valuable or correct information. So if you like this video, let me know. Please like it, and if you have any comments, please comment below. Also please subscribe to this channel if you're enjoying the videos in it, and I hope to see you in the next one.